Let's welcome to the stage, also known as the Green Man, Matthias Gelber, the co-founder of ESG Innovation Hub, the Philippines.
Sikit, lama, jadi bukit. That's what I learned from a Malaysian cab driver. I have no slides. I like the same style as our Italian friend. That's what I learned from a cab driver when I came to Malaysia, 2004. On Malaysia, my second home. You know the cab drivers, they ask you those questions like, got a job? At least in those days, Malaysia, my second home was like, you live here, but you don't have a job here. So I said, no, I don't have job. But I'm trying to make people go green. Oh, taxi driver said, oh no, that's very difficult. Very, very difficult here in Malaysia. No money, no talk. And then we kept talking about what I was doing, like this idea of step by step, get people to appreciate the opportunity that is aligned with, if you become more efficient, you reduce your waste, you reduce your energy consumption, that's good for the bottom line, right? And even if we look at the wider ESG agenda, like what Prof just referred to, the health aspect or employee wellness aspect of ESG is absolutely crucial for productivity, cognitive function, employee retention. Those are all big benefits. So as I was talking with the cab driver, he kind of at the end of our ride basically told me, you know what you're trying to do is a little bit like sikit, lama, jadi bukit. So this has become my motto for the agenda. And in those days, 2004, when I came to Malaysia, it was very difficult to convince people to take serious action on this. I gave a ESG boardroom talk last year to a listed company, and I told them, you guys are paying me top dollar now to give you an ESG talk. When I came here, I would have had to pay you to listen to me on pushing the agenda forward. This is the shift that's happened with ESG. When I was a teenager in my kampung in Germany, my late father asked me, son, how are you going to earn money? You're getting older, you seem to be just focused on, school and stuff like that. My father was a simple bricklayer. He started with 16 years old, to basically earn money. He said, what's going to be your job in the future? I said, Dad, my job is to save the planet. You should have seen the shock in his face. It's like, huh? You can't make money from hugging trees, son. You'll be poor all your life working for some NGOs. Again, a major shift has happened. The ESG agenda is complex, and in many ways it's confusing to people. Because it is not the same to every company. We have those global reporting initiatives. We have the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We have a lot of different so-called material topics. In the past, we only focused on financial materiality. What makes me more money? That is the only thing I'm interested in. Because my main responsibility is towards my shareholders and giving them maximum return. This was at least the focus for listed companies. Now we talk about double materiality. It started with risk focus of financial investors who said, hey, some of the things you do with your employees, maybe your labor conditions, that could be a significant material risk to your share price. If you have a major spillage and you're a mining company, or if you're a palm oil company, biodiversity will definitely be an issue. especially foreign customers. They prefer RSPO certification. So it started initially as a risk evaluation framework. Are you doing anything that could have a major negative impact on your share price? But now, increasingly, we can calibrate ESG, and this was the discussion earlier on the panel. Innovation, adding value, making it work for our business. As you know, we heard about AI. Data security is a key material issue, at least for telecoms companies and all those other companies that have a lot of customers and that need to make sure that the data they gather from their customers is absolutely well managed and well protected. So we've seen this massive shift. Now, investors want you to deliver ESG. Banks want you to deliver ESG. Because the Scope 3 climate emissions of banks are related to the projects that they give money to their lending. Scope 1 is your direct emissions, the cars that you have, where you're burning petrol or diesel, comes out directly from the vehicles that you own, or if you have a diesel genset on your facilities, like in Cyberview, the data centers, if there is a power supply issue, you need to kick your diesel gensets in. That's Scope 1 emissions. Scope 2 emissions is the emissions coming from the power plant that supplies the electricity that you are using within your building, your factory, your operation. Scope 3 is everything else. The things that you buy, the things that you deliver to your customer, the carbon footprint of your product in operation, the lending. My friend, the Malaysian guy, and this comes back to innovation. And yes, Prof made a lot of good points. And yes, in some areas, Malaysia could have done more. But I have always seen during the years when I was in Malaysia that there are pockets of innovation where Malaysia is ahead of the rest. There's a Malaysian company now with an industrial motor that's more efficient than even the German motors. And I'm a German. In Klopp we trust. Yes. But I have a lot of Italian friends as well, actually. I live in the Philippines. I don't know why, but my best friends in the Philippines are Italians. So, but by the way, I'm very happy to see that our MC is Botak as well, because I think that is one of the most efficient ways of living a green lifestyle, right? Exactly. No shampoo needed, no water needed. Just shake it off in the morning, and it's cool. Actually, that's a funny story. I only went Botak in Malaysia in 2008 when my friend Po Ziliang was doing this thing at the Cannes Film Festival. She was shaving her long hair to raise awareness about cancer patients that lose their hair. And then she asked me, "Hey, green man, you got to go Botak." I would have never done it otherwise. Because, I had some scars here on the back of my head. I thought maybe I look a little bit, too rough once I go Botak. But, the afternoon after I went Botak, I went through Mid-Valley Mega Mall, and I thought, are there more ladies smiling at me? So, it was a good thing to do. I never went back. So, sikit-sikit, lama-lama jadi bukit, we see this massive shift. Now it is wanted that you deliver positive social and environmental impacts. My friend who has these Malaysian guys with the super efficient motors, he did a project for the Ministry of Health, 12 different hospitals, amazing savings. When he started the project, the banks were reluctant to lend him the money. Once they realized, wow, the savings are higher than projected, the banks are now chasing him and giving him discounted interest rates because the bank can then use the decarbonization that's happening through the energy efficiency project as their scope-free commitment. You know, that is what is going on at a massive scale now. The net zero roadmaps that big companies are putting in place are public information. You can read it. You can download Petronas sustainability report and look at what they are planning to do. What is their net zero roadmap? There's something called Science-Based Targets Initiative. In the past, it was okay to buy carbon credits and say we are good. But now it's all about iterative, innovative, step-by-step decarbonization in your operations. And this is a gigantically powerful shift in industry that brings gigantic business opportunities with it. But you need to calibrate and think about where is the opportunity for me and how do I go about it. Similarly, in the social aspect of ESG, I'm involved in a startup in the Philippines. We are focused on indoor air quality and wellness and productivity of employees. During the pandemic, there was a lot of startup developments on the mental health management. We have realized these issues are important. It's about people and planet and profit, triple P. In the past, it was just about profit, but now we can be a force for good by finding a holistic harmonization. And if you have a business idea that has co-benefits in environmental and social positive impact, that's what investors want to see. That's what customers want to see. I still remember the teacher Raj, who set up this Souls 247. When he started 12-something years ago, we had a chat and talked about, hey, where can we get the solar panels from? And I introduced him to a local manufacturer, but I think they went out of business. But his master stroke was combining the social part with the environmental part, giving opportunities for people that otherwise might not have opportunities, skilling them up to become solar installers. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, the inclusive aspect of his business, the social co-benefit of his business. He got some big grants at the beginning of starting his business. Grant is better than equity investment, right? Because you don't have to give anything away from the entity that you're running. Master stroke in combining the massive opportunity of a market that is growing leaps and bounds and combining it with social benefit. Last week I had a meeting with a British guy representing an ESG fund from Singapore. They are looking for socially beneficial housing in the Philippines. They want to invest big money into houses that are part of real nice, sustainable community living and low carbon. But not just boxes that are hot. You know, like the normal concrete boxes, the low-cost housing often. They are not insulated at all. Actually, the best ever sustainable house was the Malay Kampung house. Carbon sink house. Okay, maybe we didn't have enough of those big trees anymore, the durable trees, to use for them. But nature has this powerful aspect of sequestering the carbon, taking in the carbon. That is the most powerful way of removing carbon out of the atmosphere. And the Malay Kampung house is a carbon sink house. The concrete and cement house, cement is one of the worst culprits. 7% of the world's CO2 emissions come from cement production. I mean, The good news is people are working on reducing it, including as well the Malaysian players. And next week I'm going to chair a conference here for the concrete industry on ESG in the construction sector. And that will be interesting there as well. But I have looked at a factory, cement factory in the Philippines the other day, and the guy doesn't burn limestone. He just uses volcanic ash. He buys in a little bit of cement, but he only has 10% cement content. His carbon footprint is super low. But the mega trend that we are seeing now in construction is called mass timber. Wow, that's kind of a little bit confusing, right? Didn't we think we chopped too many trees already? And we are going to endanger the forest if we move back to timber? There's a Malaysian guy, friend of mine. He set up a lot of plantations with the super fast growing trees. He just had a Thai listed company invest in him big money to scale it up. Because people want to decarbonize the built environment. The only way we can get a carbon sink is if we use nature-based solutions, natural materials. By the way, I think a lot of people have been disappointed that the carbon trading didn't really take off, right? And I had a friend of mine, a Malaysian guy, hey, green man, buddy, we have to set up a business to do carbon credits from forest. I told him forest, those days are gone, where you can say, here's a forest, we protect the forest, and we get the carbon credits. It's additionality, and it's about removal. But, and this is a quiz question for all of you, if somebody knows the answer correctly, I wrote a book, The Green Man's Guide to Green Living and Working. I'll send you a copy of that book. By the way, that book was printed with Nets Eco guys. They are out there. Another Malaysian innovator that was ahead of anywhere else in Southeast Asia. When I printed the book, I wanted it to be the most eco-friendly book ever. We printed it with vegetable inks, with recycled paper, FSC certified, and we double compensated the carbon footprint. Nets Print Eco. Those guys are the real deal. They had even developed with Cerim a standard for carbon footprinting of printing materials. I'd never heard any other country that had that. We used that standard, and that was 2015. Wow, 8 years ago. So there are pioneers, there are innovators that have already made it happen in Malaysia, and there are many, many more opportunities. What have been, that's my quiz question to you, and there is an interesting conclusion to that quiz question. What have been the carbon credits that recently people have bought at a large scale? Microsoft, Salesforce, they have bought certain carbon credits from a certain solution. Anyone here who knows what solution that could be? There is a certain technology that delivers carbon credits at scale. And I think 70 to 80% of the recent carbon credit deals that people like Microsoft, Salesforce have done are all based on that technology. And it could be gigantic for Malaysia, but so far nobody is doing it in Malaysia, as far as I know. Biochar. Biochar. Gigantic possibilities. Why? Because it's, when people want to make money from carbon credits alone, it doesn't stack up. You need to have additional revenue streams to make it commercially work. The thing about biochar is, it's basically organic, bio-based material. And here in Malaysia, we have unlimited supply of that, right? I mean, the empty fruit bunches from the palm oil industry, the palm oil trunks. I searched for statistics. Apparently 8 million palm oil trunks get knocked over every year, and they just get sliced a little bit, and then they rot at the palm oil plantation. And all the carbon that was sequestered in the biomass of that, it's actually not called a tree, it's called a grass. All that carbon that was sequestered gets released again. The only one that's made actually a move is IOI. IOI has just set up a palm panel factory, huge investment down south. So there are all sorts of interesting things happening, but all that biomass that we have in Malaysia, biochar could be a gigantic opportunity. Why biochar? If you have biomass and it rots on the open air, it goes back to carbon dioxide because there's oxygen there. If you have it in a landfill site that's called anaerobic, there is no oxygen there because it's heavy compact, you get methane. Methane has about a 25 times higher CO2 impact than CO2. So you have to convert all of the other emissions or chemicals that are generated to a CO2 equivalent. What happens with biochar, you are basically using the biomass and you are modifying it at high temperature in the absence of oxygen, and you're getting stable carbon. So this is considered a carbon removal solution. And at the same time, you can use it for carrying of fertilizers. You can use it for many other different applications. So you have two income streams. You might even be able to use it. I mean, the slight problem in the palm oil, like the trunks is, they have a 300% moisture content. So they're extremely wet. And the logistics, because most of them are in remote locations. But biochar, I think, could be a gigantic opportunity for Malaysia. So far, and I had a meeting with a biochar guy who lives here in Malaysia, and he basically told me he doesn't know of anyone yet that's actually made it happen and implemented it. These things are happening. These things are happening in Europe, these things are happening in North America. Here we have a gigantic amount of biomass that we could monetize that way. Sikit-sikit, lama-lama jadi bukit. The market alone for ESG software solutions, I chaired an ESG conference in Singapore last year. All the people that were there advertising were ESG software guys. I mean, they called themselves ESG software guys. Some of them were more coming from the chemical products management and health and safety, and maybe it wasn't a holistic ESG software. And that's one important thing as well. As we move the ESG agenda forward, it's very important for us to understand the holistic nature. What is relevant to this sector? Digitalization, which was mentioned on the panel, is an incredibly powerful tool to facilitate ESG impact deliveries, both on the environmental front and on the social front. Some of the objectives that we are trying to achieve, becoming more efficient, delivering healthcare to remote locations, the whole fintech agenda, all of these are sustainable development goals and ESG objectives. We need to deliver them through digitalized solutions, ICT. But we need to understand and do our homework. Where is the problem and what can deliver the solution? Or where is the opportunity that can deliver the solution? And I think ESG, by the way, is not perfect. There's a lot of confusion about definitions, about reporting. Too many people focus just on the reporting alone. I always tell people, make it work for your business. It's the biggest business opportunity we have seen since a long time. And you can download the ESG and sustainability reports, and there Petronas or whatever else big Malaysian company tells you what they are going to do, what targets and goals they have. That's perfect from a sales perspective, right? Or even from a startup perspective. You know, do the testing first. Those big guys that have those targets and the solution that you want to deliver, are they interested in your solution? Maybe they can already, give you an expression of interest that they want to buy the solution from you once you've moved beyond the, prototype of your product or your service. Because, the big companies are struggling themselves. Petronas publicly declared scope-free emissions very difficult. I agree with them. I can understand that they are not yet ready to, fully publish their scope-free roadmap because it's very complicated. It's very complex. And there's a lot of different variables. But all of that brings gigantic opportunities. Sikit-sikit, lama-lama jadi bukit. Malaysia could become a hub for ESG innovation and services. It's a global movement. It's a global demand. Okay, there's a little bit of ruffling of feathers in North America about ESG. And some of the people who just looked at the investment part of ESG and the different rating agencies who have come under criticism that they are confusing, you look at MSCI, you look at Sustainalytics, you look at the same company and the rating is totally different. So, but that is the birth pains of a new movement that is here, that is already enshrined in legislation. The European Union has just published 1,200 data points that they expect companies to report against once the new sustainability reporting legislation kicks in 2 years' time. This is all real. It's happening. Yes, once people in North America, especially, oil and gas states, realized that the financial investment community was pulling money away from coal and oil and gas and channeling it to renewables, they were like, what's going on here? So that's where some of this tussling is from. It's normal. People want to protect their turf. So there's a gigantic shift going on. In renewables, there's a gigantic shift going on in mobility and transportation. We are moving away from petrol and diesel to electric vehicles. I still remember, I think it was 2008, I was on a panel with the CEO of Petronas at that time in PwC, and they were launching their e-vehicle. Petronas was actually pioneer at that time, but somehow lost its track or push on that. Mobility, gigantic shift. Agriculture, we heard it early on. We need to do a lot in Malaysia to improve the health aspects of the food that we get, the way that we consume food. I need to lose a little bit of weight as well. I already lost 8 kilos. So, I realized I need to really cut down. Thanks. So, and then there is a shift in building and construction. We heard earlier on about the IoT devices, the monitoring, the controlling of our energy consumption, but even the calibration of how can we make our homes and our buildings healthy. I once surprised a 5-star hotel in Manila by telling them, hey guys, something is wrong with your air quality. At night, the CO2 went through the roof. That means there is no fresh air coming in. When we had COVID, we realized We need low CO2 levels because we need air circulation and fresh air. The facilities manager there told me, wow, you're the first guy who picks this up. Why? Because I had my monitoring device, monitoring the indoor air quality. And he told me, don't tell anyone, that's why I'm not mentioning the name, but we are switching off the fresh air supply at night to save electricity. Now, whether that's the right thing to do or not is another question. But only if we track and monitor, we will be able to control and improve. And only if we understand what is going on, we can deliver an appropriate value proposition that might be in the form of a new startup, in the form of an innovative product or service. I still remember that discussion 15 years ago when I was doing a training course in the Philippines. This lady was selling T-shirts. I told her, can you sell eco-friendly T-shirts? She said, no, they're too expensive. I said, okay, they're more expensive, I agree. But wouldn't it be an interesting value proposition to your customers that are into green and sustainability to tell them, I've got these organic cotton, or, this is no joke, I'm wearing bamboo eco-friendly innerwear. Malaysian brand, Nucleus. I know the owner of Nucleus. He said, if I would just be manufacturing normal innerwear, I would be competing with anyone else. So we shifted to a higher value product by using organic cotton and bamboo and other eco-friendly raw materials. So these are the opportunities. Yes, your eco-friendly T-shirt might be a bit more expensive, but you can open the door again to some of the customers that you have lost. And then you can even offer them eco-friendly events management, climate neutral event. I just did an LCA and an environmental product declaration with my client in Dubai. They used the palm tree waste material for MDF boards. LCAs are very, very complicated. You need to pay a lot of money to consultants doing an LCA and an environmental product declaration. Perfect service that could be delivered from Malaysia in a much more cost-effective way than we used an Italian consultant for that Dubai company, and it became very expensive. But if we have the right qualified person here, they could deliver it in a much more competitive way. The green tech and climate tech financing is already at $1 trillion and beyond. Okay, most of it has happened in North America and Europe, but some of those particularly climate tech platforms are already unicorn valuation. There's a US platform that basically helps companies with their properties to evaluate the actual carbon footprint and how it can be streamlined to improve. Those are all things that could as well be delivered from Malaysia, from Cyberjaya, potentially in the spirit of that, or Meranti high-tech park. The opportunities are here. The train is moving very, very fast. Better get on board now to be one of the pioneers. When I did my master's degree in environmental science in 93, 94, I was riding the ISO 14001 wave. But I learned as well one important thing. I was enjoying traveling around and giving training courses, and people appreciated that. One day I was running an event, and I was trying to sell some ISO 14001 software. I didn't sell a single piece. This guy came up to me and said, hey, my buddy who knows you said I need to come and see you. Your sales pitch was really bad. But for you to get all of these companies to come to this place in the middle of nowhere to listen to you, that's something. let me do the sales and the deals, you do your thing. You're the communicator. You're the guy who articulates and understands the concept and makes it easy for people to appreciate what's behind it. And what the guy said made sense. We started a business the next month, and it took off like a rocket. We sold it 1.5 years later on an earn-out deal. Okay, not enough to retire, but we both made good money. But if it wouldn't have been for the skill of that guy to make the deal and put the deal together, I would have just continued to do my little bit. So if you really want to take off in a startup context with these gigantic ESG opportunities, think carefully about who else you need to have on the team to make this a successful and prosperous venture. Any questions from you guys? Yes.
Good day to you, great man. Thank you for your attracting and funny talks about ESG and carbon credits. So my question is actually, since we are aware that voluntary carbon credit price has been dropping from the peak, right, in 2022, from 18 down to now is like around $1.22, right? And what's your thought on this kind of like price corruptions? Does it implies that actually there's no value on this carbon credit? And on the other hand, actually, in order to have this carbon credit project, right, you need to have the very high registration cost on to adopt into like the WERA and also the gold standards. So actually that, on the other hand, actually discourage people, right, whoever interesting into adoption of this carbon credit project. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, if you do a carbon credit project, you need to do it at scale because the transaction costs are not small. So that's number one. Prices depend a lot on the conditions. I mean, voluntary carbon market has always been up and down, but Microsoft or Salesforce, they buy as well in the voluntary market and they pay for these credits $30-40 because they say, hey, I like this. This biochar project is great. It's really removing the carbon. It's giving jobs to the local community here. So I am willing to pay this based on the strength of the project. So again, if you are interested in going into this, I mean, carbon credits have been as well whacked in the media, especially the carbon credits coming from, we preserve this forest and then we actually, we're not going to log, and then all the carbon sequestered in here, we want to sell as carbon credits. That's not really feasible. It's about the growth. It's about, as well, the long-term retention of the carbon. But here in Malaysia, I think the most beautiful projects where you could sequester a lot of carbon is peatland. I mean, peatland has stored concentrated carbon. In 2008, I was asked to go to Bajung Bajuntai, where there were some peat fires. And then I realized, wow, the fire is in the soil because the water table has been lowered. And then you have that carbon that was accumulated over 10,000 of years gets released. Sometimes it's even self-ignition, or a smallholder makes a small fire there and the fire travels under the soil. That's why it's very difficult actually to pinpoint the exact source. The problem is the draining of the peatland in the first place and reconverting back peatland that has been drained to a carbon sink project. That's where you can get really huge carbon credits, and some organizations might be very interested in that because that's a real additionality. if you're preventing that carbon to be released that has been accumulated there over tens of thousands of years. And we have, significant peatlands in Pahang, the airport area, Sarawak, there's a lot of peatland there. I mean, the problem with Cebu, of flooding in Cebu, is partially down to the fact that the peat dome around Cebu has been drained, and that has changed the water table. So it often has other impacts. This is as well ESG and sustainability. We need to combine those. We need to understand holistically what are the connections here, and how can we optimize the value created, the preservation of biodiversity, and at the same time make it financially viable. So carbon credits is a difficult market, a very volatile market. Only go into it if you have a buyer and a project where the buyer is, wow, this is great. I really want to pay a good price for that. Any other questions?
I think we are actually short in time, but
Okay.
once again, thank you once again to Matthias Gelbert, also known as the Green Man. Dankeschön.
Thank you. Sikit-sikit, lama-lama jadi bukit.
That's right. Sikit-sikit lama-lama jadi bukit. Ladies and gentlemen.